to finish on time as we had agreed. Deborah, welcome. And we are just starting off. I would want to request one of us to open for us today with a word of prayer. Let's have a volunteer, just a short prayer to open the webinar for us, kindly. Anyone? So let us bow down and pray and lead us into a word of prayer. Our Father who is in heaven, we come before your throne of mercy this morning with a heart full of gratitude for you've been good to us. Thank you for giving us yet another bright day that we are able to participate in this webinar. It is a chance that many have not enjoyed. We know there are many who wanted to see this day, but they were not able for various reasons. So we thank you for this. As we begin our training today, we ask you that you guide us, you protect us, and you guide our path. Kindly teach us so that we are able to understand everything that is going to be taught today. We are going to share knowledge and experiences from our different marketplaces. So help us so that we absorb. Give us the spirit of unlearning what we know and relearning again so that we are able to have an impactful learning. We pray this, believing and trusting in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So we will start as from where we stopped. I know yesterday we talked about the root cause analysis. We did an introduction. We did a recap of what you had discussed on Tuesday and Wednesday, which was effective problem solving. And we were able to discuss the key highlights of the people who had attended the session. And we were also able to link with the root cause analysis, which is a more detailed and technical way of problem solving. So again, we looked at the three techniques in general. We mentioned we have the three, which is the 5 why technique. And then today we were to embark on the Pareto analysis, or what we call the 80-20 rule. And finally, we are going to look at the cause effect or the fishbone diagram technique as a way of the root cause analysis. And I'm happy to see that in the first session, which was on Tuesday, Catherine mentioned about the Pareto concept or the principle, and also the fishbone. So today we are just going to drill into more details about that. We are going to look at it in depth, have examples on how we can use the Pareto analysis and also the fishbone in terms of the root cause analysis of a problem solving. So let me hear from you, anyone, about the Pareto concept, of what you call the Pareto theory or the principle. Someone mentioned that they have been using it in their organization in terms of operations. Let me just hear what you know about Pareto, be it being manufacturing, operations, and what comes to mind when you hear of Pareto analysis in terms of the root cause analysis. Just what you have heard or you learned probably in your degree, when you're doing your diploma, or even in your other studies. When you hear the word Pareto concept or the principle, what comes to your mind? But just by a way of sharing. Kindly unmute and just share. Anybody who has studied management have come across the 80-20 rule or the Pareto concept? For those who are unable to unmute, you could just put your comments on the chat. Good morning, Muthoni.
Good morning, Rhoda.
Good morning, Catherine.
So for me, the Pareto principle is the 80-20 rule, where the 20% of effort that you put in will result to 80% of outcome.
That is great, Catherine. In terms of production, you wanted to add something, Catherine?
No, that is all.
Great. Yeah. She's saying 20% of the you said 80% of the input. Can you say that again?
20% of the input will result to 80% of the output.
Great. That is a confirmation that this concept talked of unequal proportionality of input-output. It is unbalanced. The much you put in is not the much you get out. You can put in the little when you are really focused, and you get a big result to the tune of maybe 8% as per the standards of the concept. Any other comment? Is it Joseph or Duncan who had shared their experience in their workplace? Kindly, you could just remind us. I think one of the two. All right. So I'll just do a short introduction. You'll allow me to share the slides so that we can pick from where we started. And yeah, we picked from where we stopped. So yesterday we explained what is root cause analysis. We defined it through 3 experts in the total quality management about how it's defined. We also looked at the importance of the root cause analysis. Again, we went ahead and looked at the steps to conduct the root cause analysis, which we also recapped at the end for better understanding. Then we also discussed how we use the root cause analysis for boosting productivity, the way you're able to look at the high priority areas and the low priority areas, look at what you can delegate and what you cannot delegate. Again, in terms of the 3 techniques, we began with the 5 why techniques, where we said you keep on drilling and asking questions. Why did this happen and why? So the answer to one or the preceding question becomes again the question to the following question or the next question that you ask, so that you get to the root cause of the issue. Again, we will also see how the 5 why technique could also be incorporated as one of the steps when you're looking at the Pareto analysis. So today, we've covered much, but we are going to be very elaborate when you come to Pareto analysis and also how to draw the fishbone diagram. We'll have practical lessons, maybe even in our lives, in our profession, and then I'll also give you a takeaway assignment. Again, we are going to look at list the difficulties of the root cause analysis and also the tips of conducting an effective root cause analysis in our workplaces. So just for maybe to take us to where it all began, when we look at the Pareto analysis, the Pareto concept, or what we call the theory or the principle, was developed by a management consultant. That's when I said, if you have studied management, you must have come across this concept. And it was developed by a management consultant called Joseph Juran. We've heard about the Juran theory, Juran concept, and he named it after an Italian economist called the Vilfredo Pareto. That is why it got his name. And in the 1906, what this Italian economist had observed or shown in his research when he was working in a university, he actually pointed out that 80% of the land in Italy belonged to 20% of the population in that country. I don't know whether we can relate this in Africa or maybe probably our country, where in his research, he said 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. And this is where now this Pareto concept named after him now started being referred to as the 80-20, the 80-20 concept of the rule. And we can say that the 80% rules, we have several examples, as we have heard from Catherine. One of it is 20% of the input that you put in production is likely to yield to 80% of the results. That's one of the examples that we have. Other examples that we'll have, it could be 80% of the consequences comes from 20% of the causes. So when you're looking at the root cause analysis or the root cause theory or way of problem solving, it is going to be very clear that 80% of the problems that we have could have only come from 20% of the causes. We are going to see how we actually derive the sources of problems, and also we drill down what are the causes. So you might have 100 causes, but not all of them contribute to the problem that you have. You'll find like 20% only, if you're able to drill down properly, there is what causes all the issues. And if you're able to resolve probably 20% of those causes, then you are likely to yield 80% of the results. So that is why the root cause analysis is very critical. And the challenge is always identifying the 20% of the causes or the sources that is causing the defects, the errors, or the problems that we are trying to solve. So this is what we are going to look at the Pareto analysis in terms of the root cause analysis. It can also be said that 80% of the world income, or maybe the country's income, comes from 20% of the richest people. I know we can reckon with this. Even in this country, 80% of the income we have in this country only comes from 20% of the rich people. I know we cannot name them. Again, maybe on a light note, if you look at maybe our classes in the last 2-3 days, we could also correctly say that 80% of the contributions we have from the panelists is only coming from 20% of us. Is that correct? If you are to look at how many we are in class and how many have actively participated, so it's also part of the Pareto analysis, and it happens everywhere, not just here. So in terms of the root cause analysis, the 80-20 rule, as we will interchangeably use it, is a good rule of the thumb, so that you can focus only on the 20% of the causes to improve 80% of the results that we are looking for. Then even at personal level, when you're looking at how we live in our homes, let's come from the country now, from the organizations where we talk about the errors, the results, and also the input output. At a personal level in your home, if you go back to your wardrobe, would I be correct to say that you only wear 20% of your clothes most of the time? Is that correct? How many of us can agree with that? How many can agree with that? That from your wardrobe, mostly, you'll only use 20% of your clothes, which you keep on recycling. You see this jacket had worn it, you see this tie, but there's a way that you keep on wearing those clothes. So 20% of your clothes, you wear them 80% of the time. Again, we could say 80% of the work done by 20% of the team. Even in task force, when you go to a problem solving or you've been put in a committee, 80% of that work or that assignment that you have been assigned is likely to be done by only 20% of that team who are actively participators. And then we can also say there is also a difference between being busy and being productive. We looked at how we can use the root cause analysis to promote our productivity. And I look at this like the people who are in college, or when we were in college, how did we use our time in terms of the revision? You could find the best way you could do the revision is probably before the exams, you look for the past papers that have been tested on that subject. And if you're able to scan on several years of past papers, there's a likelihood that you are likely to know which topics are likely to be tested in the exams. So in terms of the revision, you can be able to focus your time, and instead of being so busy trying to read from the first topic to the last, you're able to focus and pick maybe 20% of the topic, or maybe 40% of the topic. And you know, if you're to master those topics, a lot of questions are able to come from there. So those are some of the tactics that we use on every day. So we are going to see how we can focus on using less to get more results in terms of the root cause analysis. And I said, when you're doing the root cause analysis, the biggest challenge, it is identifying the 20% of the issues to focus on, or the courses so that you can be able to give a 20% yield in terms of sorting your problem. Then you can deal with the other remaining 20% gradually as we proceed. So I think with that kind of an explanation, we have a proper understanding what is Pareto analysis or the Pareto concept of the principle, so that then we can apply it in terms of the problem solving. Let me hear any question or comment before we proceed on that, in just that over a general overview. Do you have any comments? Clarification probably on what I've mentioned, or sharing of experiences? Is it clear?
Yes.
It is. So with that, then we will proceed. Allow me to move people to the panelists so that they can be able to participate and we are able to interact. Victor, welcome. And I see a lot of people have joined us now. Feel free to contribute as we proceed. Welcome, Florence. So let's see what the introduction of this note says. So we are saying in terms of the Pareto Principle states that 20% of the input, which is time, the resources or the effort, accounts for 80% of output. That's the results of the rewards. That is exactly what Catherine has shared with us. It also means that whether it is in business or an individual level, you get 80% of your results from just 20% of your time and effort. So that's why we keep on saying, if in case, in the event of any training or anything that you are studying, whether you're reading a book, whether you're studying materials, what is that 20% that you're picking from as the lessons that can make you change your life or maybe the way you look at things? Therefore, we are saying 80% of your errors occurs from 20% of the activities. And once you realize, it is easy to find the root cause of any problems once you focus what is this 20% that is so impactful in what you're trying to resolve. Then the other tips that we have, every organization and individual can use the 80-20 rule or the Pareto Principle to reduce or eliminate its useless activities, errors, and effects, and can significantly improve their productivity. That is what we're going to focus in terms of the root cause analysis and solving of the problem. It also says that the 80-20 rule helps to focus on those activities that brings us the higher returns, the high priority areas, and also the ones that are likely to cause the maximum errors or the defects, which we, in this case, we refer them as the problem areas. Then we say that implementing strategy based on the 80-20 rules can lead to increased productivity, as we saw yesterday. It can lead to maximizing the profit and also maybe greater leisure time. When you talk about the greater leisure time, we look at the spare time that you create after you decluster your activities or your tasks and see which one are high priority areas, which one should I focus on in terms of my 80% of the time, and which one can you train people and delegate so that they can be handled, so that you are able to free your time and look at the core areas of the job that is likely to give you the more returns. So it is also likely to have an overall improvement on the way everybody works. And I think that is what we have just said. Then we're going to look at the implications. What are the implications of using the Pareto rule or the 80-20 rule? So we are going to look at about 6 implications of the 80-20 rule. And we are saying that 80% of the work, it is produced by 20% of the people. And this actually makes me think of when you come to the performance appraisals and the performance evaluation in our workplaces, we always see the trend of what we call the bell curve, that the highest production of the results, it's actually achieved by very few people, which are like 20%, and then the others will be in the average, and then we also have a small percent of it at the end of it all. Then we say 80% of the sales volume for the people who deals with sales in an organization comes from only 20% of the sales distributors or even the salespeople. What this tells us, when you're coming up with your sales strategy, who are these clients that you are likely to focus on? Probably if you look at the people who are in your pipeline, you can tell the sales that we do can only come from 20% of the distributors, probably because they buy in bulk, in wholesale, or these are people who are very loyal to your organization and they are not likely to go to your competitors. So as you're drawing your sales plans and who to target on, you can be able to see, if I go to this client, he can give me 80% of my results and you'll be able to achieve your targets. Again, we are saying 80% of the results are achieved by 20% of the effort that we apply. In terms of the other implications that you have in the organization is 80% of the income is earned by 20% of the workforce who are actual performers. We have said that the bell curve and the performance, and also maybe the profits we have in our organization. Again, we see that 80% of the income of an individual comes from only 20% of what you do. You can imagine we have 24 hours in a day. If we have probably 8 hours in your workplace, during the 8 hours, probably only 20% of the activities that you do, because you might decide to, this is the core job that I'm going to concentrate in, and you give 80% of your time to that. 20% of those activities are the ones that are likely to actually give you incomes in terms of the productivity and the output, and also the profitability that the organization is likely to get from you, and in turn that becomes your salary at the end of the day. And finally, we are saying 80% of the marketing results are achieved from 20% of the marketing effort. That you have so many marketing efforts. You have the road shows, you have the door-to-door, you have maybe the publications, you have the radios, you have the word of mouth. From all those marketing activities, it is only from 20% of those efforts that you are going to yield the marketing results. So those are some of the implications we have in the 80-20 rules, and we can have very many more examples in how we relate. So that is just for our understanding, so that then we are able to relate to what we are studying in terms of the root cause analysis. So let's also look at that is the implication. The implication is what the rule implies. But what about the application? So from here, I want us to get examples, probably in each and every aspect, how we can use the 80-20 rule, or how it is applicable in the following core areas. In terms of the time management, I want examples before now I pick on maybe the participants. In terms of the time management, tell us how this is applicable, the 80-20 rule. Let's have volunteers before I start picking. In terms of the time management, you could pick on any of those. We have time management, we have maximizing productivity, we have achieving sales targets, we have critical mistakes analysis, we have customer relationship management, CRM, the root cause analysis. That one you can leave because that's what you're going to deal with. And also in terms of the social science. The social science is the example I've given, how the population and the society behaves, where Pareto observed 20% of the land in that country, that's Italy, it's owned by 20% of the population. So those are the demographics. So let me hear examples from time management, maximizing productivity, sales targets, CMA, and also the CRM. Catherine, your hand is up. You can go in first.
So maybe I will sort of gel maximizing productivity with time management. Let's take an example of a company that's producing something. So if this organization takes time in planning, that's a lot of planning from the initial stage. Let's say it's a manufacturing company. They look at raw materials, where they'll come from. They look at the manpower they have. If they plan a lot on that and maximize on that, then productivity will be fast, because now they already have everything in place, from resources to finances to manpower. I think if they put a lot of effort, that the 20% in planning, then 80% will easily come.
That is very true, Catherine. Thank you. I think once we are able to plan, you remember even the root cause analysis, we said, if actually we are able to define our problem properly, then the root cause analysis will fall in place. But if actually we are not able to diagnose the problem, we are not able to define, we are not able to exhaustively look at the root cause, then we'll do all the process, but it's likely to fail. So I like that example, Catherine. Let's have another person. I see Polika, kindly go.
Morning, Rhoda. Hope you're well.
Good morning, I'm very well, thank you.
Salama. So my line of work is outsourcing, where we manage the staff on the client sites. So I want to make a link between the Pareto and CRM in relation to the sales targets. So we have two customers. We have external and internal customers. So external are the line managers and the clients. Internal are the staff members whom we manage. So 20% of proper input into customer relations, both internal and external customers, directly leads to increase in sales, which is the 80%. Yeah. In the, once you have proper engagement and client service to the users, it leads to more work from the managers, which ideally leads to higher sales targets.
That's a very good example. He's looking internally and also externally, and how their sales from their clients can fall in place. That's a very good example. Let's have someone else. Catherine, you can put your hand down. Alice, could you tell us something? Especially on the critical mistake analysis, which is related to the root cause analysis. Alice, are you able to unmute? Duncan? Hortense? Okay, we will look at more examples as we proceed. So those are some of the areas of applications that we have in terms of application of the Pareto analysis. Then we'll also look at more applications where you can. There's also the inventory and purchases, where you look, maybe when you go to our procurement or the supply chain, you'll actually notice maybe 80%, you will notice that from the inventory that you have, or even in your office supplies, from all the procurement, you'll see it's only maybe 20% of the products that move very fast in that organization. I'll give an example. In all our workplaces, what moves fast? The printing papers, maybe the toners, the writing materials, the pens, the pins, and the clips. You'll have other things in your supply or your stores that hardly move. If you buy some items, they can even take a year. For example, if everybody has been issued with a stapler, a paper punch, how often do we go back to replenish that? Probably they're only bought like 10 or 50 in a year, and thereafter, they take a long time. But printing papers, things like drinking water, those are maybe 20% of the issues that really move in and out of our stores. There are those things when you go to the lift lobbies and the stairs, you can always see deliveries coming in and out, coming in and out. Business cards, you might need them maybe once in 2 years, depending with your role. There are those that you buy 1,000 business cards and they'll take them for 5 years unless their role changes. Issues of marketing. Marketing, we have said, maybe from our whole marketing scope, it's only 20% of our niche that actually we get the results from. Issues of supplies and the purchases and the supplies, I think we have elaborated on that. People and productivity, we have said, only maybe 20% of our workforce achieve the results or the results of the organization. We've talked about the issues of performance management, performance appraisals in terms of people and productivity. Again, we have also said probably the income that comes in an organization only comes from 20% of the workforce. Then we also have the phases of Sigma methodology. We have the issues of management, and also in terms of even the economy. I think we talked about maybe in a country, maybe 80% of the income coming from a small population of 20% who are the rich people. And even among the rich people, maybe only 20% have an impact on the economy of every country. So those are some of the applicable areas where we use the Pareto concept or the Pareto analysis. And we could have many, many, many examples. So from there, we are going to look at how do we use the Pareto analysis back to our main subject of the root cause analysis. So let's look at how we apply the Pareto analysis. And we say the application of the Pareto analysis during the root cause analysis actually looks at the errors, the defects, so that we are able to understand the unequal balance or the disproportionalities, that it's not the 100% effort that you put or focusing on all the defects and the areas that is going to yield the results. So it's the Pareto analysis actually will help us to identify the most significant, the few errors. Actually, what I forgot to tell you, that it is also called, apart from being called the 80-20% rule, which came from the land in Italy, it is also called the vital, it's called the vital few rule, because you only need to look at the very few errors which are very vital, that are very critical, that are actually likely to cause a lot of impact in terms of the operations and also the productivity. So here it helps us to identify the significant, or what we call the vital errors, the problems that can be targeted for correction or the resolution. That if you are able now to concentrate and target these few, then you'll be able to have a big impact on the issue that you are trying to solve, or the problem. So in terms of the Pareto analysis, mostly we will focus on the errors, the defects, the maybe deviations in terms of the quality, and trying to solve a problem in terms of the issues that we are facing in our organization, or maybe at the individual level. So as a continuation, we say maybe some of the uses of Pareto analysis as a technique of the root cause analysis are maybe like the three that we have. So the first one is saying it's finding errors or problems that cause 80% of your problems in the root cause processes. Not everything, but 80% of your problems comes from only 20% of the sources, the causes, or maybe the effect. Then the other thing we want to look at is how to identify, to categorize, and also to distinguish into levels, which is the higher level, the low level of errors, the defects, the delays. Those are some of the issues that comes up when you're looking at the RCA. So I said we look at the levels of the errors, the delays. If it's actually about, we will use an example of some merchandise that you'll see, like when this product is being requested by a customer, it is most of the time delayed. So what are the causes of those delays? Could it be the human errors? Could they be equipment or machine errors? Could it be maybe the production, we don't have enough materials? We'll look at a very critical case study of that. And then the customer complaints that are coming. We may have a lot of customer complaints, but what are they concentrated on? What are the level? Is it maybe the website is down? Is it the quality of the product? Is it the delay? So those customer complaints that comes through maybe our CRM, or maybe in terms of the customer survey, what do they indicate? And any other measures of quality that we may have, maybe items that have been returned because of defects. And we're also going to look at any deviations that come from what is expected in terms of a standard operating plans, and maybe the standards that we have put in place. So we are going to also to look at different classes of problems that we have, especially when we come to the fishbone also. This will be very applicable. Then finally, the technique, it is used to display the results of the findings of what we come out with when you're analyzing the problem, and we plot it in a graphical way. So we'll see how we have the charts and how they show us on and give us the indication on how to arrive at the 20% critical areas that we are supposed to deal with. So we will come to that. But maybe a word of caution as you go, we say that in spite of all the efforts, I think I said this yesterday, of the root cause analysis, if the top management is not in support of the process or does not implement the results or the recommendation of the team, then it is likely to fail at the end of. So there's a lot of buy-in from the management. There's a lot of establishing the policies, the procedures, and the rules. And there is also the goodwill to implement what has been recommended for any RCA to succeed. So we will look at maybe the pitfalls and the errors that always come, or the challenges that comes with the root cause analysis. And at the end of it all, again, we are going to look at the tips of ensuring that when you're doing a root cause analysis, we are able to achieve what we are looking for. So let's look at using the Pareto charts. This is what I say, the graphical representation of the issues that we are picking in a problem and how we are able now to actually identify the 20% of the issues that we want to actually apply the 80% of our time so that we yield high results. So have we heard about the Pareto charts? It's just a word that is being used to actually present our data in a graphical matter. This could be in form of histograms, which is what we call the bar charts, and it could also be done in terms of the pie chart when you want now to drill down further, where you take one bar and break it into pie charts to see how, because they are what we see the sub causes of what we have. So you may have the main causes, which you classify as the bigger category. And then within that category, you can have other sub-causes that comes in it, and you can present them in a very simple way of a pie chart, or maybe just a line graph, whichever you'll pick. And you will see when you're drawing the Pareto chart, we arrange the categories of the issues in terms of the bars. And the highest bar, which is maybe the highest, the high frequency, the ones that occur more frequently, or takes more time, or it costs us more, it is always put on the left side. And then as you go down to the list, which is put on the right side. However, depending with the categorization that you do, if there are causes that you are not able to pack into one category that you can name, then you can put it as others. So the others bar will have many concoction of issues that are not related to a particular broad category. And when that happens, that others will still be put on the other side, regardless of how big it is, because that shows that it needs to be unpacked. So it will be put on the right side for maybe a further unpacking and say, among all these other things, can we categorize them again broadly to related items? So let's see what it says. We are saying the Pareto charts, it is just a series of bars whose heights reflect the frequency or the impact of the problem. It is that is the y-axis. It actually shows how frequent does the problem occur, or how impactful is it in terms of the time, the resources, or even the cost to an organization. And they are arranged in a descending order, the height from the left to the right, as you can see in that diagram. Then we're saying for Pareto the charts, they show the category represented by the tall bars on the left are relatively more important than those in the right side. So the ones on the left, which are higher or they are more huge, you can be able to put now 80%, maybe they form like 20% of the issue. It shows you that is the area that you really need to concentrate to work on so that you can have more effect. Again, what it means, when you see that bar being very tall, that means it has a huge impact. So the way we approach in terms of resolving the problem, you will focus all your energy and resources trying to reduce that big bar, probably to half, if not to eliminate, than first focusing on the smaller ones. Unless the smaller bar, it is something that you can have a quick fix. It's a low-lying fruit that you can use very little resources and time to just eliminate it and then you move. But mostly we recommend that you start from the biggest issues that you have, concentrate on your energy to reduce them probably to a minimal or significant level if you're not able to actually eliminate. Then we say the Pareto charts are actually histograms aided by the 80-20 rule, and they're adapted by, I say, Joseph Duran, who actually is the person who developed this and named it after the Italian economist, and are used to identify and prioritize the problem to be solved in any case. So this is the kind of pie chart I was referring to, that you can use the histogram or even the charts. So the Pareto charts are used for Pareto analysis, and they help to graphically represent the errors or defects against a common background of the issues that we are facing. Then the first Pareto chart you create will help identify the significant problem that is still too big to work on. However, now the second one, which comes in form of a pie chart, may be necessary to break down the big significant problems into workable chunks. You remember we said we start from the big, you break it down into small chunks, and then you can be able to effectively focus on that. So just how we use the Pareto charts in the root cause analysis, we can say that you can use the charts to identify problems in a root cause analysis to work on. And it continues to say the Pareto charts will help increase the process efficiency. It will help you also to conserve the materials that you have, to reduce the cost, and also increase the safety, because you already know where the issue is and where you want to concentrate. Then we say the most effective the way of using the Pareto charts is when the problem category used in the chart are defined by your customer or the person that actually uses the product or the service. So this brings us to the same discussion we had about who are the people that you use in your problem-solving teams, or what you can call the root cause analysis team. How you select the teams actually determine the success of the root cause analysis. Because you should be able to put people in your team who are actually very clear with your standard operating processes, the processes of the issues that you are going to deal, the people who actually understands where the shoe is pinching. If you just take someone who does not even understand your processes, does not understand the needs of the customer, there's likely to be some form of push and pull. There's no commitment. You'll have a lot of argument because they don't really understand. And again, they are not likely to actually properly define your problem and also give workable solutions. So the people who understand the processes are likely to give you practical, realistic solutions to your issues. And they are actually more likely to accurately define the problem that you have, or maybe recognize from the data and the information that they are likely to give. So that is how these charts should be drawn by such people. So let's also look at the other charts we have, is what we call the Pareto frequency diagram. And the frequency diagram is, as the title just suggests, it is how frequent a problem occurs. So it just looks at the frequency, where now once you categorize your issues into bigger category, then you keep on tallying and saying which one, this has happened once, twice, and then you have to come up with a very clearly defined time scope that you're going to do this in a period of a month, in a period of 2 months, or in a quarter. Then you tally as they occur. So it is the number of occurrences of those issues that you have picked. Then you can draw or plot a diagram to that effect. So it says the Pareto frequency diagram is a bar chart which displays the causes of various defects or problems or errors in order from the most frequent to the least frequent. I think this is self-explanatory. It's how you just tally and say which is the most frequent, which is not. And we said it doesn't mean that the most frequent defect or an error is the most significant. I want us to remember that it might be frequent, but it has a very low impact. It might not be necessarily the most important. So the Pareto frequency diagram helps to draw the attention so that you can focus on the most frequent problems. Always keep in mind that Pareto frequency diagram only shows the most frequent problem, which may not be the most important, but are just most frequent frequent occurrences. So let's have a tip on that. It says you should use Pareto Principle, the 80-20 rule, on a daily reminder to focus 80% of your time, of your resources, of your energy to the 20% of your work that is really important. I think we saw this, and we remember that you should not just work smart, but work smart on the right things. Maybe we could share experiences where in a project we have dedicated a lot of time and resources. But at the end of it all, we realize we spent a lot of time and resources doing the wrong, we were not the wrong things. We were not able to work smart and maybe focus on the right things. Let's share experiences. Has this ever happened in terms of problem solving where you have used all the energy, but then when you come to the real issues, you are already depleted of your time, energy, and also the resources. And you say, let's sleep over it. Let me hear any experiences in the industry, in the workplace, in the marketplace. It could have been you or your colleagues, or maybe a particular task force that was appointed in your organization. I want to pause for that sharing of experiences. Does it occur in our organizations? Does it? Mm-hmm. I want to hear your contributions. It is a Friday. What's happening? Victor, tell us something about focusing so much time, then you only find that you are going to the wrong direction or not focusing on the right things. Kindly unmute and tell us something. Deborah, in finance. Mm-hmm. Are we together? Let me see if we are together by show of hands. Yes, Duncan, you're saying we are together. Uh-huh. Any experiences that we have? Catherine, I can see you are there. Polycarp, oh, all of us, we are there. I want to hear experiences. It doesn't mean it has to be your own experience. You could have observed it. Like Pareto observed. Mm-hmm.
Rhoda, maybe I could share my experience.
Yes, yes.
Previously, I was working for a manufacturing company,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more of a social enterprise because there's a corporate side that is profit making, and there's a sort of NGO side that is non-profit making. So this manufacturing firm got a grant to produce this item to help various communities. And this item was being sold for very, very cheap. Usually this item would go for 5,000 shillings, but now it was going for 1,000 shillings because this item would help the community. So what management did, and sorry, I can't mention the item because I feel like people will know the company.
No, you don't have to. There's the confidentiality, yes.
Yeah. So what management did, they focused on selling this item so much. So they hired various sales agents across the country from Kisumu, Kakamega, whatever county you could think of, had 5 to 10 sales agents. And these people were selling this item like crazy because now it was going for 1,000 shillings. But only find out that these people were stealing the money, were stealing the item, or it was just a hot mess. So they had to stop the project for like a month and go back into planning. And first, they had to come back and first hire a project manager and hire at least 3 sales executive, key people that would be able to travel across the country to monitor and do reports. And then they had to stop the cash transactions. So this item could no longer be bought in cash, but only M-Pesa to stop the embezzlement issued. The project manager had to partner with the supply chain people to help them get warehouses, install CCTV. So I feel like they made a mistake by focusing on the work instead of the planning. But they incurred a lot of losses, but we came back and now started planning, putting the effort on time and planning. That is the only way they stopped losing these items. Yeah.
Wow, that's a very good example. And you can imagine by the time they were changing their strategy and starting to plan, they were already depleted of the resources.
Yeah.
Fatigue had already kicked in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very good example. Then I can see someone's hand is on. Is that Hortense? You can tell us, share your experience. Hortense, I can see your hand is up. You do want to share something? He's put his hand down. I think it was for the earlier session. So that's very good, Catherine. And let's see what we can look at. We said we have different methods or techniques of problem solving, and also the root cause analysis. But we also need to understand, as we had probably in the previous sessions, when is it necessary or when is it useful to use this kind of an analysis, because you can see it's graphical. You have to use the pie charts to be able to get to the 20% of the issues that we want to focus your 80% energy on. So when is it that necessary for us to use this kind of method? Because we said we have various methods of problem solving. Some of them we had a behavioral, which we normally use mostly in the HR and the people-related issues. We also saw the open inquiry, the kind of approach. We saw the why, where you keep on asking the 5 questions, the 5 whys. And then we have this, what we are calling the 80-20 rule. So when is it necessary or maybe more useful to use the Pareto charts for the root cause analysis? So we will look at some of the situation when it is useful to use this, and we'll look at about 8 of them where we can apply this kind of an approach or a technique in terms of resolving our problems. So this, we are saying this, the 80-20 rule or the Pareto rule, it is good to be used when you're analyzing that data that can be broken down into categories. You realize it's not all data or information that can be broken down in bigger the categories, so that you're not able to count the frequency of such data. But the 80-20 or the Pareto analysis, it is more effective when we have data that can be broken down in categories and that you can count the frequency of each of that occurrence occurring. The second incidence or the situation that you can use the 80-20 rule of the Pareto analysis is when you want to identify which problem should be studied now and which one can we postpone for a later date, as we narrow down on which causes of the problem we want to address first. You remember we said you could first have the temporary quick fixes, and then you can have the real preventive measures. So when you want to categorize the problems you have or the issues that you have into priorities, the ones that you want to deal with now, focus all your time and energy before you get depleted, and the ones that can wait, this is a better situation to use the 80-20 rule of the Pareto analysis. The other situation that we can use the Pareto rule is when you want to draw attention to the vital few. Which are these? Yes, you may not have all the resources and all the time, or maybe all the competencies that you need. Probably some of the competencies have to be to come from outside in terms of consultants or maybe the experts of the specialists. But what are these, the vital few that we can really focus on, and the important factors where the payback is likely to be the greatest, so that you don't spread your resources, your time, and also your workforce thinly. So when you are in such a situation, it is very good to use the 80-20 rule. Then as we go, the other situation is when you're looking to process improvement or maybe the quality improvement. When you are looking at, we are looking at process reengineering, we want to improve our processes and also maybe the quality of the products we have, this rule is very applicable. Then the other situation that the 80-20 rule or the Pareto rule is applicable is when you want to reach consensus on the causes of the problem or the errors. We all reckon that when we are put in a team or in a task force, there are as many opinions as the number of the people or the members seated in that committee. So for you to be able to reach a consensus on what are the real causes of the issues that you are dealing with, then the 80-20 rule, or maybe the graphical presentation, which is data-based, it is very useful. Because for any root cause analysis team, it is always good, whether you are the leader or the facilitator, to ensure that the decisions or the recommendations or the problem identification that you are proposing to your team, because maybe you are the core person, they must be agreeable to the team, they must be realistic, and they must be practical. So to build that cohesion or the consensus on the issues, the problem statement, and also the identification of the issues or the causes, then you can apply the 80%, 80-20 rule. Then the other situation that you can use is when you want to focus your effort on the biggest problem that you have. That is the highest bar you see in those charts. When you want to focus on that, the 80-20 or the Pareto rule will be very applicable. And the other situations that you can have, it is when you are making problem-solving decisions. For you to be able to make decisions that are credible, that are valid, we want to base it on data or maybe such graphical representation. So when you want to make such decisions and you use the Pareto charts or the rules, you are able to back up or support your decisions because they are data-based for them to be valid and also credible and also to pass the test of time. You can say, I based my decision on this. So you are in that situation, the 80-20 rule, it is much applicable. Then when you want to reach consensus on the choices that should be made to eliminate the errors. So on the choices that you make, or maybe the resolution or the recommendations for you as a team to make to reach consensus, the 80% is very useful tool to use. Then we can look at maybe some of the practical examples. We can look at some of the practical examples of using the Pareto charts in terms of the root cause analysis. So some of the examples that we have that are very practical, we can use them in terms of improving the process for increased the unit maybe readiness when you're going to the marketplace in terms of the production, the types of units that you want to be ready for the market that are of the right quality, then that is where we can also apply this. Then it is also practical in deciding the skills enhancement of the people. Because when you look at the causes of the problems, we will see that also when we come to the fishbone diagram. It could be the causes of the errors that you are having or the defects, or maybe the delays, it is lack of the training or lack of maybe the workforce. The number of workers that we have probably are less, or maybe the skills that they possess, it is deficient. So when you're making decisions on the skills enhancement of your team, or maybe the capacity building of your team, this is a good example on how you can use that in terms of the decision making. Then the other example where this rule is used is identifying your core customer needs, maybe through complaints and also surveys. So once you get the feedback and the feeling of the people who are using your services and the products, then you can make improvement decisions from that kind of data. And finally, it can also be used when you want to identify the investment opportunities, because you are able to categorize and clearly focus on where you want to invest your resources, your time, your money, and also in terms of making those investment opportunities, you can know where you are likely to get high yield in terms of the investment opportunities that you have. Then it can be used to set priorities for many practical applications, which are along your line of duty or maybe your scope of work. Great. So how far How good? Are we good? Hope we are together and you're actually able to see how we use the 80-20, the Pareto rules, in terms of when to use it, how to use it, and also the practical examples. Then let's move on to how do we use the Pareto charts? How? Yes, we have seen how we draw the charts using the frequency, the bars, maybe the cost, the time, and how we come up with those histograms, the pie charts, and also the line charts that we took. But how do we use these charts? Yes, we have already identified the issue. We have categorized the causes, or maybe the effects. We have seen how frequent. So this is more of the data collection and defining of the problems, and we use them. So once we have that data, how do we use it? We have those graphicals. How we use it? We are going to look at several ways we use it, and we have maybe the three that I can see on that slide. First, we use that data to draw attention and maybe the cooperation of the others of all the concerned targets that are important in the problem solving, the problem solving of the issues that you are dealing with. So we want to draw the attention and the consensus, and also the cooperation of the other, that the data we have, which we can represent in terms of the graphical or the numbers, then we can focus on that. Again, we also use it as a basis to divide and conquer the problem. So you're able to break down the bigger problem into small chunks of activities that can be dealt with. So there's the concept of the divide and rule. Here is the divide and conquer, so that we are able to approach, and we have the priorities of, once we divide them, which is the high priority, where should we invest more of our energy on, and also the focus. Then we also use these charts to map what we call the island hops. The islands hop is, in terms of the histogram that we saw, you are able to identify the bigger bars and say, first we will focus on this. Then once probably we reduce it into half or to a manageable significant level, then we can still go back and say, after we are done with this, where do we jump in next? Then you are able to jump to the next priority areas depending with how high those bars are. And then after that, you again apply the root cause analysis the same way you applied, so that you are able to reorganize. Because what you recognize, once you sort out one issue, probably the biggest, it is likely to change the whole equation and maybe also the other effects. So reorganize it again, and then you're able to concentrate on the highest, you reduce until you get to the lowest. So you're able to spread your time, your resources properly. So in terms of dealing with the problem. I can see a comment on the chat. We are saying, hope the notes will be available for revision. Deborah, yes. In the learning management system of ACHRP, we are going to get the video recording, and you also get all these templates so that you are able to follow up. But feel free to stop me when you want me to re-emphasize on any of the point. These notes will be available just the way they are, and also the video recording will be available on the YouTube, which I think has been shared on the chat. So don't worry, you can just take the minimal notes, but we are going to share all this information. So have we all understood what we call the island hoop, that you are able to categorize or maybe put a circle onto? This is the island or the high areas that we need to focus on. Then once you sort that out, then you move to the next area. It can show you that we can jump from this bar to the next one and the high priority areas until we are able to significantly reduce most of the issues and yield 80% of the results. Any question up to that level? Any other question? Let's just continue how we use these Pareto charts, just a continuation. So we have said how you can use it. The other area, or how you can use it, we use it when we have small problems that are easy to fix. We said fix them fast. Any low-lying fruits in those bars, we said mostly we focus on the big bars or the bigger problems with a name of significantly reducing them, if not eliminating them, and maybe probably using less energy on the low activities or the bars that are on the right. However, we say when the small problems that have been identified are very easy to fix, then you can easily fix, because they use less time and resources of your time. So you can just fix them and you move ahead with that. Then how we also use these charts, we want to create a new Pareto chart. Once we have dealt with what significant issues of that chart, you can still use the same process to draw other charts, because now the equation or maybe the representation of what we are remaining with are likely to change. The other thing we say that new Pareto charts will show the progress of how far we are in terms of the fixing of the problem. So once you have significantly or for a period of time you have used those, then draw another chart using the same processes. It shows you how far are we, how much are we achieving, and also it demonstrates the progress of what you're trying to do. Then we also proceed. Once now you reorganize the data and you draw another Pareto chart from the original one, then you don't go back to the old data. You continue using the new charts and the new data that is coming out of the root cause analysis. And then we also, and every time you come up with a new chart of relooking and reorganizing what is remaining, you always remember to use the most significant problem in terms of the frequency, the time, and also the problem that you have. Good. I think we are doing very well. Let me pause for questions, clarification up to that level. I told you the Pareto analysis, it's quite technical, and we are drilling down to it. Then we look at the last two topics on the same. We're going to look at the process of the Pareto analysis, and then we are also going to look at the 4 phases of the Pareto analysis, and we'll give examples, and from there we'll go to the fishbone diagram. Any questions so far before we go to the process? Or let me cover the process and the phases. Then before we go to the fish diagram, I'll pause for questions, because maybe the questions you want to actually ask are in the process of how we get to those analyses. So with that, let me proceed. And the processes, I'll look at it in 14 different points, but I'll try to simplify them as far as possible. Then you can look at the notes. So the process of Pareto analysis, what are some of the steps that we take in terms of the Pareto analysis? I know yesterday we looked at the various processes where we were saying the problem identification, then understanding the context of the problem. Then we have the quick fixes. Then we look at the preventive measures. We looked at all that process in terms of the root cause analysis of the whole problem. But now coming to the Pareto analysis, I'll classify the steps into 14 points, but we can break them down. It will be a very simple process that you can follow through. So the first step of the process of Pareto analysis, it is actually to decide on how you will classify your problems or your causes. So when you are looking at an issue, we have a problem here. Let's say it's delay of delivery of goods to the customer. So what could be the possible causes of that problem? So you look at ways or the broad ways of categorizing those problems. Could it be machine breakdown? Could it be lack of ingredients like the way we saw? Could it be transport challenges, because maybe the transport challenges you have are issue? Could it be the issue of rework? That when we make these products, we're having a lot of many errors and defects, and they have to be redone, causing the, the problems of delays in the delivery. Could it be that in our process of production, there are delays of handing over from one stage to the other, and probably we need for process reengineering? Could it be people-related issue, that there is complacence from the workforce we have, or the people that we have hired are not sufficient and we are having a strain with the number of workers we have? So the first step is to decide how do you want to classify your problem, into how many broad categories as the causes. Could it be people, machine, maybe the service, or maybe the system downtime? So that is what you decide the first thing. Decide on how you want to classify the problem. And we said Pareto analysis is only effective or can be used where you can classify the causes of the problems broadly. Then the second step, after you decide how you want to classify your problem, it is you make a list of the preliminary list of problem categories. So which are they? And you don't come out with a big list. We say limit yourself to a maximum of 6 or 7 problem categories. So the first is decide how you want to categorize, then list down the the 5, the 6, up to a maximum of 7 categories that you have. So those are the first 2 steps. Then after you do that, you need to determine the time frame or the scope of your investigation or the analysis in terms of limitation for consideration. You cannot take data without a scope. The scope comes in terms of what is the time scope that I want to pick. Is it for a period of 1 month? Is it from the beginning of the year? Or is it from the time we started collecting the customer complaints? Like you can remember the case study we had. So you determine the time scope and which processes are you going to concentrate on, because you have a clear problem definition so that you have a limited and a specific time scope for your problem. So we say the first step, decide on how you want to categorize your problem. Number 2, you list the problem categories that you have into maybe 4, 5, 6. And you determine the frame of time, that is the scope of the limitations you have. And this must be able to be representative of the whole issue you're trying to investigate or analyze. So if the time, it is 1 month, from maybe the beginning to the end, how long will that take? So that time scope or the limitation you have taken of your study must be full representative of the whole process you're trying to analyze. Then the 4th step that you'll have, you tally each problem categories. Now you have different problem categories into numbers, the way you tally, so that you are able to get the frequency. It has happened once, it has happened twice. Every time that occurrence comes, or there's another, maybe probably there's a defect or a returned item, then you tally within that team. That is the phase of the data collection. Every time this occurs, then you tally so that you are able to have a number so that you can see which is the most affected area. So again, after you tally, we determine the total number of occurrences. So the total of all the categories, how many occurrences do we have? Let's say we say 100. Then in terms of one category that you have, how many occurrences? Probably issues of rude employees has happened maybe 20 times out of all the 100 occurrences. So every category will have its own tally. Then you'll have a total of what? The tally. Then you get the cumulative percentage of which. So what you're trying to do, we are just going to have a percentage of each category, so that among the 100%, you see this category has 20%, 10%, 5%. This is just the normal way you used to plot graphs or to come up with the data. So in every category, you will see the percentages of the impact of each category. Then you arrange the problem classification from the highest value to the lowest value. And then I had said that if you have issues that are of the other category, they should still be maintained as that category and should be the last, regardless of what percent. Whether it is 100%, 90% of the most significant, they should still appear as the last when you are arranging them. So then from there, just plot your graph, come up with your graph, which are arranged from, I say the highest from the left, and I say the others comes as the last in case you have other categories. Others, we say, is where you put all the conclusions that are not able to fit into your major categories. Then after you plot your graph, then you start interpreting that graph, where you say the height of the bars actually represent probably the most frequent activities that you have. So, and maybe the highest value, the highest impact, and it shows you where you need to concentrate. The other issues now, like drawing any other graph, label your graph. What does, or your bars. Once you label them, then we say the horizontal or the x-axis, it is based on the problem categories. So you'll have as many bars as the number of categories that we have. And we said we limit ourselves to 6, 7. Then the vertical axis, we say it is going to show the impact or the value. Yes. Then after you draw the bar, I think we remember the one that was held by Aman. Since these bars are not supposed to touch each other, they are supposed to be separate. After you have now that bar from the highest to the lowest, and maybe if you have the other category as the last, then you plot a line along the tips of those bars. So you join this bar using a line, what we call a line graph. Then from there, put the other basics. What is the title of the chart you have? what is the problem statement, then do a summary of the problem, and then maybe just write a summary of how did you collect the data in terms of the scope, was the methodology and all that we do in the research. Then from once you have the chart, then you make the Pareto decisions that you can use to clarify or identify the most important problems, because now you can, what we say, the hoop island, you can actually identify or maybe circle the biggest issues that has the highest frequency, the highest impact, or the ones that are most significant into causing the problems from the categories you have and how you have arranged them. So with that, you can make your decision. And finally, we are saying you can use the same process to construct other charts. Once you have resolved most of the issues, then you can still go back and make another chart, and maybe with percentages. And that we are saying you'll be able to look at all that. Is it clear? I know it's long, but it's just the simple way we draw our charts or any graph in any research. It is that simple, where you determine how you want to classify your problems. You have a list of all the preliminary causes that you can classify in categories. Determine the scope of the time or the processes you want to look at. You start tallying. You start determining the occurrence in terms of the percentages. You arrange them in a bar graph. Then you join them with a line. After you join them, then you can name them, label them, do a small summary of how you have collected the data, and then make your decision basing on that representation, and then start the process all over again once you have dealt with most of the issue. It is that simple, but you've seen many explanations. And maybe just the tip for this, we are saying, in terms of the category, we said, what are some of the broad categories that you could use in terms of looking at the issues and the causes? And they are normally 4 big standards that you can use. It could be machine failure. It could be people-related, customer complaint. It could be maybe financial constraints that we have. It could have come from the customer survey, or maybe the quality assessment instead of the errors, the standards, the return, the rework errors. Those are some of the things that you could use as potential sources. Of course, when you come to the fishbone has identified 4 standard measures, but these keep on changing. So in terms of the Pareto analysis, you can use any of that category. This has come out of the customer complaint. Escalation issues are being escalated from one level to another, or the cost escalations are too high that we are not able to break even. The machine failures, probably because of lack of maintenance, are too. So those are some of the things that you use. And allow me to take you through the last item in terms of the Pareto analysis, and then I'll pose for questions and clarifications. And what we are looking at are the phases. After we look at the process of the Pareto analysis, what are the phases of Pareto analysis in terms of the root cause analysis? And we have 4 basic phases that we have, and they are probably related to what we had looked at earlier as the stages or the processes of the root cause analysis. So the 4 phases that we have is identification of the cause or defects. It is very clear. You identify when a problem occurs, what are the causes of the defects or the errors or the problems that you're trying to solve. Then the next one is collection of the sample data. You remember we said, look at the scope, start collecting the data. And the third one is graphical representation of the results that we have collected. And finally is just the interpretation of the graph results. I think those ones we have really alluded to into what I looked at the process. You could classify them broadly into those 4 phases. And maybe just to make us understand, I'll take us very quickly. What is involved in terms of the identification of the causes and the defects? What are the activities that goes into it? This is, you actually brainstorm and identify all the possible causes of the issues, the errors, the defects, or the problem. Then as you brainstorm in those focus group, you narrow them down into what is the most possible. Of course, there is the broad one. You start from very general. This could have been caused by 1, 2, 3, 10 items. Then you narrow down them into 5 or 6 items and say, these are the highly possible or the most significant cause of the issues that we are trying to sort. Then data collection through brainstorming, focus group, and surveys. And we say in those brainstorming, involve the people who are problem owners or who are likely to understand the processes very well. And you aim at finding the actionable items in terms of the issues you are picking. So the issues that you are picking as the possible cause, they must be actionable. Otherwise, you might pick causes that are not actionable and you cannot take any recommendations or solutions to it. Louisa, your hand is up. Kindly tell us something. Louisa. Louisa, I've moved you to the other side, so you're free to contribute. Yes, so those are the issues that goes on into the identification of the problem. And we can give an example. Let's take an example of a manufacturing industry. Manufacturing, oh, it was by mistake. I get you, that's okay. I'll give us an example of a basic example of manufacturing industry. And let's take as a company that a company that manufactures glass products. And maybe some of the causes of the problems of the defects that could be identified could have been poor production processes as one category. Then we could use mishandling or factory level, where maybe the people who are in the production are not so careful, and that causes a lot of breakage of the products. It could be faulty packaging, that when you are packaging the products that are made of glass, they are likely to break. It could also have been a problem during the transportation. So that's how you actually identify the causes of the defects. And if you look at the examples that we have given, they are all actionable. You can do something about it. You can do something about the poor production process. You can do something about the mishandling at the factory level, because people need to maybe follow the SOPs and be more careful. If it's faulty packaging, there's something that the organization can do about it. If it's something to do with transportation, it is within our control. Is it that the people who are handling the transportation are not careful? Then, so that is the first phase of the identification of the cause. And we said once you identify them, categorize them broadly as we have. Then, yes, we can, the comment there is all of them that have been identified can be acted upon, because you don't want to give non-practical or non-realistic cause effect. Then the second phase we have is collection of the sample data. And when we talked about the data collection, we say we decide on the time period so that we have a scope of the analysis that is representative of the time and also the whole process. This could be monthly, biannually, could be quarterly, depending with the period that we want to focus on. Then you tally the quality problems that you are picking after you collect all the data. We said that. And then we go to, after you collect the data, there's a comment that say, for example, for every returned window due to the reason of poor production, you should add one tally for that cause. Continue the process of tallying. I think we know how we use the tally, the sticks to tally the number of occurrences or the number of defects that have been reported. Then the third phase is graphical representation, which I have actually explained in details. So what you do is just to summarize and represent the results graphically. Then you express in percentages of each cause in relation to the total number of defects, is what we say. Then you plot it in a graph in form of a histogram. Histogram is those bar charts that you can see, and you can see the highest is on the left, and then they are not touching each other. Then you do a graph to actually show the ascending order and where you want to concentrate on first. Then I explained the x-axis, it has the occurrences, or maybe the y-axis have the frequencies in terms of, so the x-axis, which is the horizontal, will have the name of the what cause of the defect. Is it the transport? Is it poor handling? Is it about the delays? How you categorize them will determine, the number of categories will determine the number of bars you have. And the higher or the height actually shows the impact, the significance, or maybe the frequency of those occurrences in terms of where you want to focus your mind on. this is just an emphasis of what we say, that that you should list the causes from the left to the right, with the most often occurring causes listed on the farthest left. Hence, the least occurring causes will be shown on the farthest right. Then we say the histogram is then made more easily interpretable by drawing a cumulative line graph over the existing bars. This histogram with the line is called the Pareto chart that we've been talking about. With that, I think we just now look at the last phase, which is interpreting and applying the graphed results. How do we interpret and how do we apply the results we have seen in such a Pareto graph that we have? So in terms of interpretation, being the last phase, that is phase 4, we are saying the line graph drawn over the histogram shows the percentage of total of defects that we dispose as we perform the actionable items from the left to the right. Then we say, we will notice that about 80% of the defective products are caused by 20% of the possible. If you look at that graph, you can actually see that 80% of the defective products are caused by 20% of the possible defects causes, proving the correctness of the 80-20 rule or the Pareto rule. Then we're also noting that conduct another Pareto analysis before moving to the other identify problem during a root cause analysis. And maybe just to sum it, we are saying changes in one production process, or maybe the defects, how well we solve them, it is actually likely to shift the other remaining quality problems, and hence the need to do a fresh Pareto analysis because the problems are likely to be disproportionate. And just maybe to jog our mind, there's a multiple choice question there, and which I think anybody should be able to answer. And we are saying the width of the bar in a Pareto chart should be, if you look at the bars in those charts, are they the same size in terms of the width? Are they different? There's somewhere we said they should have been of the same size. So as you're drawing them, ensure in terms of the width, they are all of the same size. They should not differ. It's only the height that should be able to differ. So that is the answer. That is A. And that brings me to the end of the long topic of Pareto analysis. And I'm hoping with that kind of a wide explanation, now you are able to understand what is the Pareto concept, what is the Pareto rule, what is 80-20 in terms, and where you can apply it either in problem solving and all aspects of our life. Is it an eye-opener? Will you ever hear the word Pareto and you don't remember what it means? It will just be like the Maslow's theory, hierarchy of needs. Do you agree? Let me hear your comments. I want to post there. It has been long, but before we go to the other one, the fishbone diagram, which will be the last technique of problem solving that we look at. We started with the 5 whys. Now we have dealt with the Pareto analysis. Let me hear your comments, contribution, and your take about it. Is it applicable in problem solving? Is it something you're likely to use if you're put in that committee of problem solving? Is it like something that you're likely to use in your daily life? Let me just hear. I'm pausing for comments as I take a breath. And I also want to be guided whether we want to take a break. It is 10, maybe a 5 minutes break before we come back. Let me hear from you. Let me hear from you. Comments, clarifications, anything. You can put it on the chat. You can raise your hand, or you can just unmute your mic and share your thoughts about the Pareto analysis, whether we have been able to demystify, whether we've been able to link it to the root cause analysis. What's your take on that topic?
Hi, Rhoda.
Hi, Polycarp.
It's good. It's applicable, but
Mhm.
if I had I would still have a bit of inclination to the 5Y,
The
unlike
5Y.
like the Pareto, because it seems a bit it needs predetermined parameters per se.
Mhm.
I would still have more inclination towards 5Y.
Mhm. That is according to Polycarp. He feels the 5Y is still much easy to draw because you keep on drilling. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? And rather than picking the categories of the causes and determining and trying to reduce them and plotting, yeah, this is it's more time consuming. And though we have an understanding of it. Thank you, Polycarp. Catherine?
For me, whoa, it's really, you've really explained it properly, and it's, wow, it's really a beautiful thing. And I think it would work in a situation where, well, it's a bit of a flex if you if you're using bar graphs and charts to talk about a situation. But I have had to report to senior management team that are very, how can I say, they're very data oriented, they're very visual. They do not want to hear you, for example, kitetea people. They want to see the numbers and they want to see representation. So this can be used when you have that category of management. Yeah.
That's a very good observation, Catherine, because if you remember in the slides where we were talking about when is it useful to use the Pareto and what situation should you apply, we kept on talking about when you want to buy-in, when you want to build consensus of what can we crystallize as the main causes, when you want to actually have maybe build maybe consensus on what are the causes, because you may have 100 reasons or causes coming from people, but how are you able to narrow down into actionable item? And again, the other thing that you'll also pick in Pareto, and when you come to generally the root cause analysis, the actionable items must be very clear and must be very practical. And whether you are in a team or the one implementing this, you should not be able to take maybe solutions or recommendations or causes that are not actionable, that are not realistic, that are not valid from any team. So that is why you are also able to equip yourself. And probably if this report is coming to you, maybe as a HR, you should be able to maybe to probe and ask deeper questions. How did you arrive at the 6 and not this? Because I'm sure even from the first time you look at it, you say, I don't think, probably someone has done a report and say the cost is people. And why is the cost the people? Because there is high turnover. Or maybe people are poorly remunerated, so they are not motivated. That is why we have more errors and more. Could it? So you are able to even critique or question when those things come up, because you'll see most of the problems of occurring in the workplaces, they'll be drilled down to the people. And when you talk about the people, they are not motivated. Why are they not motivated? They are not well remunerated. And then maybe the people, they are saying we should increase their salaries and that. So as you're looking at this report, when you want to have the consensus in a team, because it is not likely that everybody will agree, how do you justify your work? How do you justify the recommendations you are making? And as Catherine has said, for those who sit in the board and they have to convince, and for you to do these recommendations, you have to invest in money, time and energy. So for them to give you that money or to make an investment decision on what you're proposing, you need to have data, HR metrics, data-backed information that they can be, so you can see it is on this basis that we are making and drawing this conclusion. So that's a very good observation, Catherine. When you are put at a corner and you have to really justify, at times telling a story and maybe just an opinion, it could be seen as non-objective and maybe just a personal opinion. And you can imagine you are coming from a committee where people have different opinions. The people you are going to present maybe your report to, maybe a HR committee or a board committee, they also have their opinion. So how do you bring them to your understanding? So this is when you look for such items. Again, we said there is no one defined method or technology of resolving problems. At times, it depends with the problems, and then you can use a bit of this and a bit of the other so that you are able to come up with a solution. So you could interchangeably use any process. Again, Polycarp, we said, you may say, because maybe you are in HR, the 5 why is a very an explorative inquiry technique is very useful, but it may not serve all the situation. Probably you have been drawn into a committee that is dealing with production or product development or customer complaint, which is totally off your line of duty. So again, you might pull at this one and say, yes, as a HR, we are also aware of this. So it is always good to be ahead of the other people, ahead of the pack, and to show actually that apart from what you do in terms of your profession, you also have this other knowledge of the business. That is very good, Catherine. Any other comment? Am I seeing any hand? I think I see one comment. Someone will say we continue to the end. That I think that was earlier. So with that, that was in response to the break. So we can continue. I'll try to make the fishbone diagram as simple. Actually, it's not as detailed as the Pareto analysis, but we want us to understand. So with your blessings, I hear people say we continue to the end, we don't take a break. Is that agreeable with everybody? That's one comment. Someone said, let me hear another one, a hand in support of that. Then I want to have a democratic class. Comments on the chat. Do we break or do we continue to the end? The hands are in support of we continue to the end. Yes, Alice.
We continue.
We continue.
We
That's
continue.
Okay. That's enough consensus. So we continue so that we are able to finish on time. So the other area that, or the course objective we are going to look at is to explain the steps for creating a fishbone diagram. And this, I'll make it as simple as, is eating a fish simple? Depending with where you come from. There are people who find it very simple, and there are those people who also find it as an uphill task. But if you look at the shape of a head, shape of a fish, especially the fish skeleton, that's where we are going to base our discussion on. And maybe just to start us off, the fishbone diagram is also referred to as the cause-effect diagram. They refer to the same thing. And it is a problem-solving tool, or maybe a technique, and a fault-finding tool which facilitate the thought process in dissecting the real issue of the problem into standard 4 controlling sources, from which the users can now think of possible causes of the issue or the other problem. So from a very high level, it actually uses 4 contributing sources of problems. And from these 4 standard, of course, they can be more than 4, but the concept has dissected them into 4 big sources of problem. And from the 4, then you can put other sub-causes or the causes that are really applicable to the business. So this is how we are going to look at it. And we are saying it is a very useful tool for analyzing problems within the operations, within the supply chain, within the manufacturing, and also any other area of business. Probably not so much, even in HR, some of the aspects you'll see one of the source, it will be the people. And then from the people now, it's where you drill down on the HR activities. So when you're looking at a problem, it looks at a problem from an organization or a high level, that the cause of the problem could not just be people. It could have been caused by many other parts and components of the whole system. So it has classified them into 4 standards, which we will look at them. And the 4 standards they look is machine and equipment. They'll also look at materials, the materials that you use in production. How are they affecting the errors, the defects, and the quality of the products that comes out of the system? It also looks at the methods. The methods are the processes. how is the handling of these materials to the end product, and could any of the method being used affect the quality standards of the output? And also the other final aspect it looks at is the people. So mostly when you look at a fish, the fish head, or where the mouth is where we will take the issue of the defining the problem or the problem statement, because we say the fish rots from the head. So the head will represent the problem definition of the problem statement that we had looked at yesterday. Then when you look at the main spine, which is the main backbone, it is somewhere in the middle. Then across that backbone, you draw 4 lines. Now, this is where the trainers miss the physical classes, because I could have a whiteboard and I could have drawn the shape of the fish. Now, I can only draw through my explanations. So we have the head, and then we have the main spine. From the main spine, you draw the 4 main lines, or you could have 5. But for the purpose of this discussion, we are going to use the 4 lines, 2 on one side and 1 on the other side. So that becomes like a skeleton. So the first one, you use the main source, which is the machinery and equipment. Then you can have another line for the materials. Then on this other side, you draw another one for the methods, and then from the people. Then as you dissect those 4 sources of the causes of defects or the errors in this problem, then you can come to people and say, from the people, what could be the cause of? Is it inadequate workforce? Is it skills gap? Is it lack of handover or the leave policies? Is it lack of all that? We are going to look at an example as we proceed. So that is what the fishbone diagram or the cause-effect diagram means in terms of resolving a problem. So we will see what we have, but that is basically at a very high level what the fishbone diagram means. We can see that diagram of the fish. I say the head near the mouth, it represents the problem statement, and then the causes and the effects will come at where we are seeing the lines that are coming from the main spine. So we say the name of this diagram, the fishbone, it is coming from the appearance of how it is put graphically, which is the appearance of a fish, as you can see. Then it is also called the Ishikawa diagram. Note the word Ishikawa, that is a Japanese diagram, and it is based on the founder of this technique. The founder was called Kaoru Ishikawa, Professor Kaoru Ishikawa, who brought about this concept. And it mostly helps to identify all the possible causes and the effects that could contribute to a particular problem. And it can be drawn on a paper or maybe on a PowerPoint. And actually that demonstrates what I had talked about, the problem. Look at the picture, the problem statement on the head near the mouth. And we can see the 4, here we have the 6 lines. For me, I use the 4 lines. We say there can be more. The man is what we call the people. The problem could be caused by a man or a human cause. The other issue we are saying, the problem could be caused by the materials themselves. It could have been caused by the management. Lack of decision, lack of maybe allocation of enough resources or even time to deal with the problem. So management could also be the cause of the problem, because we have a process, maybe we have a policy that has not been approved or has not been implemented because of the management style. It could be the issue of environment. We talked about the workplace environment could influence how the people work, whether people have the proactiveness, they take initiative, or they are just complacent because probably then the disciplinary processes are not working. It could be issues of the culture of the organization. Or on the other side, it could be issues of the machines and the equipment that we are using. Probably we don't maintain them or we don't service them. Then it could also be the issue of method. So for that, you can see, you can put as many as possible, but in this case, we are going to categorize or maybe look at 4. But when you come to your workplace, you can draw and have as many causes or sources of that problem. Then from the smaller lines, then the sublines, you put what are the real causes in terms of the management. Is it lack of policy approval? And that is how we look at it. So that explains all that. So the next thing that we're going to look at, I say the smaller bones that are coming from the main 6 that we have seen, or the 4, there are courses that are listed on the branches or the small under various categories, mainly out of the 4 or the 6 standards. We will use 4 for this particular case so that we move. So we have about 6 steps that we use to create the fishbone diagram. And the 6 steps, I'll categorize them, or maybe narrow them or summarize them as follow. So the first, which is the same as what we had in the RCA processes, is the problem statement definition. You have to define the problem statement correctly. And specifically, we said it must be SMART. It must be specific, it must have time, and it must be measurable, it must be actionable, and all that. So how well you define your problem determines the success of the whole of this RCA process. After you define the problem, then there is the identification of the possible causes. Yes, this is the problem. Then what is the possible causes? For this case, you'll allow me to take you through a particular example in terms of the problem definition. What is, could we say, is a SMART problem statement? And then as we move from one step to another, we will also give real-time examples so that you are able to relate to this. So in the first maybe problem statement, let's have a problem statement that reads as follows. The first one is the customer's order for customized maybe mountain bikes. You see how you make customized mountain bike because you want it in this color, you want this shape, you want the pedals to look like this. So you go to a mountain bike organization and you want to order one that is customized for you. So the problem here is the customer order for customized mountain bikes are delivered 3 weeks later than regular mountain bikes. That if I go to this organization XYZ and I order for a normal mountain bike, it will arrive in 2 days' time, or maybe in a week's time if I order online. However, the problem here is if I order a customized mountain bike, it is coming 3 weeks after, 3 weeks later than a regular bike. So what could be the cause of that delay? That is the problem I want us to deal with as an example. Custom orders for customized mountain bikes are delivered 3 weeks later than regular mountain bikes when you order. And we want to drill down in terms of the root cause analysis of how the fishbone diagram works. So that is the first step. The problem statement is defined. You see, it is very specific. The delay is there, and it's being compared with normal bikes, and the delay is a period of 3 weeks. So that is the problem statement that is SMART. Then we go to the second step. We said the second step is identification of the possible causes. So we start to brainstorm what are the possible causes of that. And I want to use the 4 standards that we have talked about. Maybe the possible causes is where now we start looking for data collection. What happened? The data collection relating to maybe the production. Is the delay in the production line? Probably we don't have ingredients, we don't have the spare parts, or maybe the asking of the customers was too detailed. Could it be the issue of the warehouse, that after production, the product takes more time at the warehouse before it moves? Is it the issue of supply chain? Probably that the parts that you want, or maybe the customization that we need, it is not in our stores and they have to be ordered, and hence the delay. Then we identify the possible causes. Then you go to the third step. The third step is identification. It's the drawing of the fishbone diagram. After you have actually come with the problem statement, because you don't start, you hear a problem and you draw the diagram. You start by understanding the problem. Once you have, there is a problem here. Then how you want to resolve it, what could be the causes? Then you start plotting your fishbone diagram, and you include now those things that you have picked in that diagram. So on the head, you put your problem statement. Then you put the possible causes. And probably we said here, we narrow down it into 4 hypothetical or example cases, the 4 standard sources that I talked about. So you have one line for machinery and equipment, another one for materials, then you have another one for man or people, then you have another one for methods. If you have the other environment and what you could still add in the diagram. So you have a skeleton of a fish bone diagram. Then you move to the next step, which is the fourth step. So the fourth step is that for each of the 4 problem sources or the 6 that you have identified, then you as the user or the facilitator of this root cause analysis, you need to brainstorm and think of possible causes and hypotheses that are related to that source. So for example, if you come to the issue of, we talked about production, well, maybe the warehouse, we talked the issue of maybe the transport, or maybe the method that is being, maybe there is delay. So for that particular problem, if you look at the 4 sources of problems that we have picked, for example, the first one, the problem statement you have had is already there as the head. And we say customer orders for customized mountain bikes are delivered 3 weeks later than the regular mountain bikes. That forms your head. Then when you come to drill down on the people, why are people a source of problem? And you'll say, probably we have few skilled workers to build these custom bikes. It's a specialized thing that need highly specialized people who we don't have in our workforce. When you come to materials, what are some of the possible causes of material being a source of our challenge? It could be materials and parts are not readily available. What need to be customized? They are not in our stores. They are not readily available. Then when you come to machinery, you could put things like maybe there is frequent breakdown of the machines that are used to customize, or probably they are not there. Or maybe the product changeover from when they move from a normal bike to the customization, probably it takes a week for that product to move from the normal regular mountain bike to the customization maybe stage. Maybe there is a delay there, and that could be the issue of the machine. Then when you look at the methods, what method could have affected that delay? It could maybe poor building, maybe standard operating processes or procedures for this customization. Probably when you're coming up with a mountain bike, we have a very clear standard operating procedures. But when it comes to customization, probably because it is done by 1, 2, 3 artists, we don't have any recorded or written down standard operating procedures. So it takes them time because it's an issue of trial and error and depends with the person who is dealing with this. So that is step 4. Just to make us flow, we say the first one is problem solving, the problem statement being defined. Then we said identification of the possible causes. We said the 4 maybe. Then you draw the fishbone diagram where you put the problem statement and then you put the bigger bones in terms of the sources that we have. And then for each of those sources, you drill down with smaller bones on there as the branches. What are the possible causes that you have brainstormed, like the examples we have given? Then we move to stage Then we move to stage 5. Stage 5 is where we are saying for each of the identified causes now, the same thought process is repeated to try to identify root causes for each cause, which is similar to the 5 why approach. So you remember someone say they really favor the 5 why approach. So you could ask, why do we said maybe the cause of that, the smaller bone was few skilled workers. That's why we have a problem with the people. Then you could say, why are we having, now you keep on asking the 5 why question. Let's drill down on the people. Why do we have few skilled workers? Some of the reasons you could have, there is low employee retention rate. People come and go. So every time we have a high turnover. Then why do we have, then you go to the next why question. Why do we have low employee retention rate? Why are people moving out of this company very fast? And you could say probably the low salaries and the few employees benefits, they're always taken by our competitors. So you keep on drilling. When you come to an example like the materials, we have very few parts or readily available parts. The reason could be the few custom parts are there in the warehouse, and probably why? Because maybe there's a long lead time in terms of ordering for them. If you come to issues of machines, you could say the reason why we have is because of the frequent breakdown. But why do we have a frequent breakdown? And you say, because there is lack of regular maintenance of our machines. So they keep on breaking down. So that is how you apply the 5 within this fishbone at that stage 5, where you are asking the why to every causes or possible causes that we have identified. And lastly, the last stage we have is the validations. Once we have all the causes, then we do the validation process or drill down to reach the root cause under each category of the problem. So here we actually isolate the credible or the valid reasons that we can arrive at to maybe 5 or 6, and that is what maybe may form a category in terms of the issues we are looking at the Pareto analysis. And that brings me to the end of fishbone. It is that simple. Is it hard to draw? Let's hear. That's the end of the fishbone. And now we go to what are the challenges and the difficulties that we have observed in the whole of this course. When we say we want to go to root cause analysis, what are the challenges or the pitfalls that we are likely to face? And then we'll also look at the tips or how we can ensure that our root cause analyses are effective and efficient. So let's say a comment about the fishbone. It is not as complicated as the Pareto analysis. We take some few comments. It is short, simpler, almost close to the why compared to the Pareto. Is it clear for everyone? Is there a point that you need me to emphasize? Yes, Duncan.
No, it's clear. It's clear to me.
It's very clear. So let's just remember the 6 steps: problem statement, put it on the head, identification of the possible causes, then draw the fishbone diagram by inserting those things that we have picked. Then, against each of the sources, look for the possible causes through brainstorming and also the focus group. Then you also ensure that you go through the same thought process by asking why to A, so that you're able to get to the root cause. And then you do the validation, because the work that you want to come at the end of the day, you want something that is credible, something that is valid, and something that can stand the test of time. So with that, allow me to move to the next course objective. And the next, which is the second last course objective, is we want to look at the difficulties of the root cause analysis. It sounds a bit technical, but what are the pitfalls that we can identify with this, and how can we avoid them so that we have an effective RCA? Maybe we could just start by brainstorming. For all what we have studied yesterday and today, the 3 techniques, the 5 why, the Pareto, and now the fishbone, what do you think, what do you pick as some of the difficulties or the challenges of using these techniques broadly, or using the root cause analysis as a method of problem solving? Let's hear. Maybe 2, 3, 4 challenges we are likely to foresee. Yes.
Off the top of my mind,
Yes.
one of the clearest one of the difficulties would be the objectivity of the person doing the RCA.
The objectivity of the
it may
person
not be
doing
as
the
technical,
RCA.
yeah, but be it the 5 why, be it the Pareto, it actually, you are required to deal with the problem, not the person. But from a cultural perspective, we are inclined to have a human being pay for it. So it needs to be a bit objective.
That is very good, Polycarp. Objectivity of the person facilitating or being in the team of the RCA. We said some of the competencies you need is to be a critical thinker, to be objective, so that you can put aside your biases. Also, the other challenge I'll say maybe in the work environment is you can imagine this is a multi-department kind of a team that is trying to deal with a problem, because we have people in production, we have people in the supply chain, we have people in the legal because of the contract, we have the people who are being bogged down by the customer complaints, we have people in the ICT who feel we are not. We are likely to bring to that team the silo mentality of the departments, where everybody is taking their ground and saying it is ICT, it is not us. As in customer care, our work is just to receive the complaints and to log them. Then the supply, I didn't receive a requisition from you. That kind of a blame game and the silo mentality, it is actually likely to influence and also to impact on the objectivity of that team or the person who is facilitating. So you need to be level-headed, you need to be objective, and you need to be a critical thinker, and also come with the mind of, I want to look for a solution that is sustainable, that is long-term, that will contribute to the growth and the profitability of this organization. How many of us are able to do that? Probably very few of us. So the composition of the people driving it is likely to be one of the pitfalls. Thank you very much, Polycarp. Let's hear something else. Hortense, let's hear. What are some of the pitfalls or the challenges you foresee with this?
Hello.
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 Yes, Joseph, tell us something.
Some processes here, in my view, will take a lot of time. And some of the times we encounter some of these challenges, they sometimes come out of a crisis, and the time available for purposes of doing a concrete process to determine the root cause sometimes may not be there. So time is a big constraint sometimes to come up with a credible research or process. While sometimes when in a crisis, maybe, for example, people have stopped working, you know, you may not have all the time to go through a proper critical analysis to determine. Maybe probably after resolving the quick fixes, you can be able to go back and probably look at it professionally or through this process, any of these processes. Otherwise, they are good processes, but time can be a constraint when you're handling a matter of of a crisis, so that to that effect. So to me, time sometimes can be an issue. Yeah, for a proper, credible process. Yeah.
That is true. That's why we said in one of the processes, what are the quick fixes we can do so that we return to normalcy in terms of the operations? But then once we fix it temporarily, I think it shouldn't stop there. It's what we call, even in a crisis management, there is what we call the post-mortem of the occurrences. And I think this is where it should be able to occur. And again, the goodwill and the buy-in of the management, depending with the management style, are they likely to give you a free hand to do this kind of a critical analysis? So those are some of the challenges that we see. Rose, your mic is on. Did you want to contribute something? Yes, Rose.
To say some of the problems, lack of creativity by the staff concerned, then unsuitable environment where you operate in, and failure to follow the policies and the procedures set, and reluctance of the staff concerned.
That is very true.
Thank you.
That's how the ground is. How does the environment, how does our work environment operate? Are we focused on looking for solutions that are sustainable? Are we looking for a blame game? Again, even as a committee, they may do all this work.
The organization should have a suitable environment or a place in where to take that operation to operate in. And then yes. And then the rules and policies should be followed to date. And then people should also have their commitment so that they can achieve. Yes.
That is very true. And you have picked a lot of points there, which we are going to look at. Let me hope I've not closed anybody out so that we can look at all those. They are all very true, and actually they're among the points that I wanted to share. Anyone, before I lock you out? We say time and resources may not be on our side. The environment may not be conducive. We may come up with policies that gather dust and we don't implement.
I've lost you. I cannot even hear.
Rose, can everybody else hear me? Rose has lost me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Rose, I think the connection problem is on your side.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now I'm hearing this.
Okay, great. So let's proceed. We will look at these difficulties that we are likely to see, and I've summarized them into about 6, but I'm sure there are more than 6. So on a very high level, the pitfalls or the challenges we are likely to experience as follow. So the first one of the pitfalls or the challenge we are likely to face when we are carrying out or conducting a root cause analysis, it is failure to ask for help. Majority of us or people in the organization would want to take a problem because it is HR problem, it is procurement problem, and they want to run with it solely alone. And they may not be objective or open enough to hear the opinions and the viewpoints of the other. So the moment we fail to ask for other people's opinion, pick their viewpoints for us to understand, then we are likely to even go get it wrong in terms of the problem definition and also the problem statement. And we agreed, once you get it wrong at the beginning in terms of the wrong, the definition of the problem, the RCA is likely to fail. So we say, as per the number of people who are there and those who are being affected directly or indirectly, their viewpoints are diverse and they are very important, and they may give you a different perspective from how you're looking at it. So one of the pitfalls is not asking for help. That is one of the pitfalls. The pitfall number 2 is inaccurate diagnosis of the problem. Inaccurate problem statement or maybe inaccurate understanding of the issue, because you can see we may be treating the symptoms and not the root cause of the issue, might lead to the failure of the root cause analysis. And as someone had alluded to, or given a workplace example, if you get it wrong in the planning, in stating your problem, you will not get it right further on. And we'll all agree, garbage in, garbage out. So if you start with the wrong cause, or you start treating a symptom rather than the root cause of the issue, then the root cause analysis is likely to fail. Then the third one, the third pitfall that we have is the failure to understand the root cause analysis, that it is not about replacing one part with another, but looking for improvement of the existing processes and the systems. I'll give an example. If you find that one of the source of the issue is the people, probably they are demotivated. Instead of going to the root cause why the people are not operating optimally, and you go to a spree of firing and replacing the people, you're just going to be treating the symptoms, like the headache someone had talked about, rather than the root cause of the
Chair,
issue.
Sorry for
Please.
interruption.
Yes, please.
I'm hearing some noise on the background. I'm not concentrating.
Oh, Rose, could you kindly mute? Rose?
Yes.
Kindly mute. We are having some interruptions from your end. Kindly mute so that you're able to unmute when you're ready to speak. Thank you for that. I think now we can move. So I say the first pitfall is not asking for help. If you decide to do it your own way and not pick other people's view, it is likely to fail. Then number 2, we said inaccurate diagnosis of the problem, or when you get it wrong in the planning and you're not able to pick the correct or to define your problem statement, then the RCA is likely to fail. Then I was moving to my third point, where we said it's the failure to understand that the root cause analysis, it is not about replacing parts and fixing one issue with another. Our understanding when you're approaching the root cause analysis, should be based on the need and the desire to have a sustainable improvement of the system, and also to mitigate or probably eliminate the problem. And I gave an example that we may be working in an organization where we think the people are the problem, and we go for short fixes of, if we remove Rhoda and we replace with a Peter, then we will have removed the problem. She may not have been the problem. The problem could have been maybe other issues. So you may be trying to treat the symptoms the way we said you can just pop up a painkiller so that you deal with the issue of headache. But maybe the root cause or there is an underlying condition that should be treating rather than. So those short-term fixes that are easily picked should not be the end to it. It should be part of the process. So failure to understand that the root cause analysis is not about replacing a faulty piece with another, but it is about improving the existing processes, the systems, the procedures, and standards so that the problem can be mitigated or completely eliminated where possible. Then the fourth difficult or the pitfall that we have, it is the failure to identify all the root causes of the issue. You could be having a headache because you have an underlying conditions, which could be more or who could be one or more. So if we actually remove some of the root causes and not remove all, we have something that is that has remained, then the root cause analysis is likely to replace, to actually persist or maybe recur. I'll give an example of when someone goes for an operation or a surgery, a major surgery, probably they want to remove a tumor, or maybe they want to clean up something, and you go through an operation or a surgery. And in the process of doing a surgery, maybe one of the reckless doctor or without knowing, leave a small item in part of the body and doesn't remove everything. Or maybe you're trying to operate maybe a cancerous tumor, and you're not able to scoop out everything that is affecting this patient. That problem is likely to recur. It's not likely to be eliminated. So that's what we are saying. The failure to identify and to deal with all the root causes can be a major pitfall, and failure or missing out on any of the root causes can lead to the problem recurring, and probably recurring in a much more significant way. Then the other, just a minute, my slides. Then the other pitfall or the difficulties we are likely to experience is the failure to understand the working of the individual component as well as the whole system. That's the issue I was bringing about in our workplaces, where we have the silo or departmental mentality. And we only want to look at one department as the cause of our problem, and we don't want to see the interdependence of one component or one department with the other. We could be blaming the procurement department because of a particular issue, or the marketing department, yet the issue we are dealing with is just a component of many components that work as a system. So there is need to understand and to look at each of the components of the processes and the system, and to look at the whole system as a whole. So failure to understand the working of individual components as well as the system as a whole can prove to be a major weakness in terms of the root cause analysis. So how components of a system interact, how they interconnect, and how they influence the performance of each other, it is a key determinant in terms of the root cause analysis. And finally, another major pitfall that we are likely to face in the root cause analysis is the failure to follow through the actions or the steps or the solutions that have been identified by the root cause analysis committee or the processes. This could be out of the management style, the leadership style we have in our organization could contribute to this failure to follow through. That you'll come up with a process, you'll come up with a very good, beautiful paper, but then the follow-up is lacking. It could be lack of competencies, that the things that we have recommended are not even practical, they are not actionable, they are not implementable. There are no resources that have been set aside to implement this, or the policies that we are proposing have not even been put in place. Probably we say there is lack of recorded standard operating procedures. And we recommend that, like the first case we had yesterday of the secondary and the primary database, where there was lack of the standard operating system, we have recommended and we have identified that as a main cause, but nobody has taken the effort to follow up and to ensure that these standard operating procedures are in place. It could be out of the culture of the organization that we talk. It could be the working environment that we are operating on, or the industry that makes them very hard to to actually implement. And just another question that I want to throw in terms of the fishbone, to just confirm that we really understood. We said another name for fishbone diagram is cause effect diagram, and we also said is also called the Ishikawa. So maybe just to have someone telling us, answering this question, the fishbone diagram was developed by who? We have four multiple choices. Is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Is it D? Someone to respond to that? Who developed the fishbone diagram or the cause effect diagram? Is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Is it D on what you can see?
B.
It is B, Kaoru Ishikawa. And that is where we got the name from. So thank you very much. That's the answer. And finally, we come to the last session or the last objective of this course for root cause analysis. And we have looked at all the problems, all the pitfalls, all the difficulties, all the challenges of these graphical, data-oriented problem-solving techniques. But is there hope, or it's all dull and dim? Let's look at maybe some of the tips that I want you to take away from this session is the tips for effective root cause analysis. What is it that we can do differently to ensure that we get to the root cause of the problem that we are trying to analyze? So we are going to break it into several points. Probably we'll just look at it into the eight tips that you can carry away, that if you forget everything and you want to reduce the difficulties and the pitfalls, this must be the 8 halves that you have to carry away from this course. So the first one, when you're doing a root cause analysis, the first thing that I would advise is do not rush looking for solution immediately a problem occurs. So as soon as you face a problem, don't rush into making decisions or coming up with the solution, because at that moment where we want to do the quick fixes, we may not have all the solutions, or maybe the possible and the most significant and the most valid solutions that are likely to come are not obvious at that point, or they could not be visible. We could just be looking at the symptoms and not the root cause. So there is need to take your time. There is need to involve a lot of people in terms of brainstorming, especially the problem owners, the users, whether they are customers. We need to do a survey. You need to interview the people in the production, in the warehouse. So it is always essential that you take time, as someone had said, which we find time may not be might not be available for most operations or organizations, because we are busy people. But what are we busy doing? Do we want to be busy, or do we want to be productive? Do you want to work smart, or we want to work smart for the right things and the activities? So that is one of the tips. Do not rush into looking for solutions immediately as soon as you face a problem. Root cause and solution may not be easily obvious or visible at the point of the crisis. Then the second tip is the role of the facilitator of the root cause analysis actually should be assigned or allocated to the member of the root cause analysis team. It should not be an outsider where you say the project manager or the facilitator is the CEO, who is hardly in touch probably with the process, who may not have experienced the process and the complaints firsthand. We just give maybe the facilitator as a based on hierarchical positions or structural position. The person who is facilitating all this should be a member of that team who is there for the brainstorming, for the focusing, in the building of the consensus, and who actually understand the processes and what the organization is going through. And also, this helps in keeping the track of the progress, that in every discussion, in every step, they move from stating the problem, identifying the possible causes, looking at the cause effect. That person should be able to track the program, the problem, in terms of even reviewing that once we eliminate this, then how does this problem or the cause and effect actually change, or maybe they shift position, they should be able to track all that, and they should be able to put aside their biases and also their personal feelings into this. So this will help in terms of building the consensus with the people who are dealing with the issue, and it will also help in terms of their ownership and accountability of the entire process of the root cause analysis. Then the third tip that I would give for this root cause analysis is that we ensure that the solution or the improvements that is suggested, that the person who is facilitating or carrying the ownership of this, it must be agreeable to everybody in that team. So building consensus is very critical. I know some of us, we make decisions through where we don't build consensus and we go into voting, and when you move to another room, then you hear some dissenting voice and you wonder, well, these people in the same team. So as a facilitator, or as you who is proposing changes, ensure that you are able to negotiate with the other people so that you ensure there is a buy-in. So by the time you come up with those solutions on the recommendation, it has been bought by everybody in that team. So you should not be forcing solutions. You should just negotiate for buy-in and build consensus. And that is why we have learned about the various tools and the techniques that you can use that can enhance that buy-in. Probably you may start with the exploratory inquiry into a problem. Then you have so many diverse causes that you're not able to actually narrow down into the major causes, and everybody is holding their position. Probably that is the time for you now to unleash the Pareto analysis and the graphical to actually say, can we see where the 20% of the problem, yes, we agree we have 100, but which ones carries more weight and which one do we need to invest our energy and time? So you bring up those knowledge that we have learned and also the practice of that experience. I'm sure you can bring it at any point. So you ensure that anything that has been suggested, it is agreeable to everyone, or there is a consensus of the team in terms of the majority. Of course, we may not lack one dissenting voice that may want to pull out. Then the fourth tip that I would give is we only suggest steps, actions, and improvements that are practical, that are implementable in the real life situation. Let's not get lost into so many graphs, into so many theories, into so many techniques, and we lose touch of the reality on the ground. So as the person in this team, you should be able to understand your environment, the political environment, the culture of the organization, the investment that you are likely to get, the kind of support that you are likely to get. Ensure that for any success of the root cause analysis, you've done a close analysis and you have understood the context. You can textualize the problem and the environment you are operating, and ensure that what you are taking away, it is something that is implementable in a real life situation of your organization. So you must be realistic and you must be very practical into what you are trying to sell and what you're trying as your recommendations. And then the fifth tip that I would give is practice, practice, practice. In terms of the problem solving, all the techniques that we have learned from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, they are not any knowledge that you learn. You have to practice for it to be entrenched and for you to be able to establish and probably to use them. Started from a very personal level, individual level, when we talked about the 80-20 rule. The time we talked about improving your productivity, the way you look at the high priority activities, the low priority. We talked about keeping a log of all the activities that you do probably in a week. Then you are able to categorize the low priority and the high priority. Again, we said, which are the activities that you can delegate? Which are the ones that you cannot delegate because you are the only one who can do, and you have maybe the skills and the. So let's apply all the problems solving skills that we have learned on our everyday life, in every decision making. At times, some of the problems that we have are so small in the department, and we can say, can I try to test this knowledge and the experience that I learned from this course, so that with time as you practice, it becomes very easy and well understood, and you are able. So practice, 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 whether in a big way or in any small everyday activity, practice it in an individual level or even on a professional level. I'll give an example. We go through problem, probably what problem are you facing currently, maybe in your career, in your profession? Why don't you ask the why question? Why am I not able to get or secure a job? Probably the job market has changed, or maybe there are qualifications that are being looked for that I don't have. And why does this keep on recurring to me? So when you do that in your everyday life, practice makes it perfect. We say even the experts, the people who are talking about these techniques that they seem very scientific and even technical, they all started as amateurs. We say all the masters started as amateurs. You better try, fail, try again, fail, until you master the techniques and the arts in everything that you learn, not just for this course. Then the other tip that we'll give in terms of ensuring that we have an effective root cause analysis is to ensure that you look at all the causal effects or the relationship that exists between the direct components of the system that is involved in a problem situation. At times we say one of the challenges we encounter is when we are not able to look at individual component compared to the whole system. So when you're doing any root cause analysis, you should be able to clearly look at the causal relationship, which component is dependent on this. Probably some are within your controls, other are out of the control, but you are able to understand the whole value chain or the system, what is likely to affect or influence the performance of the other in terms of solving your problem. Then number 7, in terms of the tips for effective root cause analysis, I would say never agree to implement an action plan. This is something that I say, that you've been handed over an action plan that is not realistic, that is not practical, that you don't have the resources, and they are not within your control. So as a facilitator, as a person, never agree to implement an action plan that you cannot implement practically. It may be very good on paper, but when you come to things on the ground, it is something that cannot be implemented, and you should be able to do that. You should only agree to implement action plans that are within your control, that are practical, and that are realistic to maybe what you have. And finally, we say, select the right team. The composition of your team in terms of the root cause analysis will determine the failure or the success of your root cause analysis. And we are saying members of this team should be people, I'll keep on saying, who have critical thinking skills, who are able to put their personal biases aside and they become as objective, who are ready to commit their time and resources into the activity, and also those who understand the process thoroughly and are able to explore maybe the why, the what happened, and how the process operates. So those are basically some of the 8 tips that we should actually employ when you're doing a root cause analysis. So now, this is our call for action. As I said, let us practice all that we have learned about the root cause analysis, about the effective problem-solving skills. Let us practice on an everyday. So that is just my call to action, that whatever we have learned in the last 4 days in terms of the September series, the CPD series, let us practice. Then I have a practical or maybe an assignment for you to carry home as we come to the end of this session. And I'll challenge each and every one of you to pick one problem that you are facing, either at personal life, at professional life, or maybe even your workplaces. I'm sure there are already teams that have been formed to deal with specific problems that you are. And can you create maybe a fishbone? It is not as difficult as the Pareto. Create a fishbone diagram for this problem. As you are having discussions in those meetings, what is the problem, so the statement that you are dealing with. Then in your rough paper, there's someone who is their mic on. Alice, kindly mute as we come to the end so that we are concentrated for the few minutes. Alice, thank you. Thank you for that. So I challenge you to pick one problem at the workplace, as personal level, at professional level. Just draw a a fishbone diagram, pick the problem statement. Along the spine, come up with the sources. What is the sources of all this problem? And then come up with the possible, and you'll be able to have a clarity of mind as you're having all the discussion. And you'll come to realize all the discussions you're having in that team, they are actually centered in that problem solving technique. Then you answer the following question. And when you're answering this question, whether at personal, professional, career level, organization, please be very honest with yourself. Be authentic, because it is you we are trying to improve. It is for your personal benefit. It is for your organizational benefit. It is for your career. It's for your profession. So what is the problem statement? Even in your life, what is the problem that you are saving? You're actually facing at this point in time? What is the problem? And how could it be that I've gained weight because of the lockdown, because of maybe working from home? You can look at all the, what you call like the 5 pillars of personal success. What is your health? How do you exercise? How do you build your career? How do you do personal development? What is the level of your spirituality? All those aspects that surround you as a person. What is the problem that you are facing? Where do you think it is not working? Is it financial management that you feel your financials are not very healthy? So be very honest and very candid, where you just draw yourself and say, who am I now? And where do I want to become? Maybe in the 3 years, in the next 1 year, in the next 6 months, by the end of the year, as we enter the last quarter of the year, who am I now? Who do I want to become? Look at all the aspects of what you consider to be successful in life. What is it that I've been putting aside and say, I want to start this, I want to do this, but then we are coming almost to the end of the year. So what is that problem statement that you have? What areas of your life do you want to work with? And then bring, what are the main causes? Is it that I don't have finances? Is it that I've been so busy? Is it that I've not been creating time to take a walk or to just jog? Then what are the root causes of all this problem? Draw those bones. And how can you eliminate this? Can I squeeze my program? Can I wake up early? Can I spare 15, 30 minutes in the morning or in the evening to do a walk, to go to church? Do I listen to all that? Answer those. And how can you, then you ask yourself, how can I eliminate this so that I'm able to achieve your target? I think for me, that is what will be your take home. That is what I would want to challenge you. Of course, we have a case study next, but I'll not look at it because it might be far-fetched, but I want this training to be impactful to you. So we will not look at that Jupyter software, but you'll find it in the notes that are going to be put in LMS, so that you can just practice and have more sense about what is happening. So in terms of the course summary, I think you'll find what we have dealt with. So by the end of this, for me, I hope you understand what is root cause analysis, the definitions, and also the meaning. I'm sure now the basic steps that someone had told me to actually refer back to, the 5 of them are there. Specify the problem situation, understand the problem situation, take immediate action plans. Most of us, we stop there. Take corrective action steps and establish the solutions. A lot of us drop the ball there. Then we have looked at where we have spent majority of our time is looking at the 3 key tools and techniques for conducting root cause analysis. Of course, some of us are already weighing ourselves and say, the 5 whys will work for me. The Pareto, for those who love maths like Deborah, could say the Pareto, it is because they have a lot of data, could work for us. All the fishbone of the cause effect diagram that we have looked at. And again, we in summary, we can just say the 5 why technique in root cause analysis. You have to ask a series of many questions so that you identify the sequential causes of the failure that lead to the problem. Then you have to find the cause effect failure path. And we can see how these techniques have been used interchangeably and borrowing from one to another. We have looked at the Pareto analysis and the cause effect, which is the last time that we have done. And that, for me, it is a congratulations for listening for the last 2 days. And we have finished the module for root cause analysis. And I'm sure now we are more enlightened. Now we know one additional thing about the root cause analysis, about the problem solving, that is not just the general the problem solving. There are more effective ways. And from us as ACHRP, all what I can say is you look out for the upcoming events. I know Dan has been very actively informing us of what is coming up next and what to look for. Actually, there's the next event, which is the Self-Industrial Relations Summit, which will be happening at Sarova White Sands. This is already confirmed. It is scheduled for 12th to 14th of October 2021. And in November, we all look forward to the 6th HR Symposium. I know the time, the dates and the venue will be confirmed as we go along. And as I said, I know Dan has also, I've seen Dan has actually shared the YouTube where you can subscribe and you'll be able to get all the videos for the series that we have gone through, the video recordings on YouTube. And then you'll access all these notes already. They are in a learning management system on the portal for ACHRP, so they are easily accessible. So with those, that brings me to the end of this session, and it brings us to the end of the September CPD series that started on Tuesday with effective problem solving that we were taken through by Catherine and myself. I took you through the last 2 days on the root cause analysis. So with those few remarks, I open the floor for any comments, any clarifications, anything that and any feedback about this. So it has been a very good for me, and I hope it has been insightful for you. And I wish you all the God's blessing. Let's hear from you before we close, but that's all from me. Let's hear any comments, any areas we think the ACHRP should focus on in future, and how has the training been as we wrap up. Any comments? Silence.
Rhoda, Chair.
Yes, Duncan. Yes.
Mine is just to appreciate the good work for listening with my 3 interns here.
Wow.
So we really appreciate the content, and we look forward to listening more from you.
Thank you, Duncan. And thank you for being a mentor to the 3 interns. It's something that is very special for them as they walk this journey. That's part of mentorship. And thank you. And keep on encouraging them.
Thank you.
That's great. So with that remark, I think we can declare this session officially closed. And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors, your other activities of the day. I wish you God's blessing. And from me, it's bye-bye. And thank you. Bye. I'm looking forward to seeing you again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.